Alright, what's going on, guys? Elden Ring DLC did a lot to expand not only on the gameplay, but also the world, and the way we understood the story of this game. And while it did answer many of the questions we had, for every new clarification we got, two even bigger mysteries took its place. And perhaps the greatest example of this lies in the revelation of Metyr, the Mother of the Fingers. This DLC has a big chunk devoted to the lore here, delving into the past of the two fingers, Metyr, and the very nature of the greater will. So as we attempt to understand this story today, if you enjoy all things Elden Ring DLC and want to stay up to date on the lore and discussion, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and now let's get into it. To begin this discussion today, we need to start at the end, taking a look at the remembrance of Metyr, the Mother of Fingers. The mother of all two fingers and finger creepers was in turn a magnificently gleaming daughter of the Greater Will, and the first shooting star to fall upon the lands between. Metyr is an alien to the lands between, a creature from beyond, originating not only from space, but from a lightless void. We encounter many creatures of this ilk throughout the lands between, whether it be the falling star beasts, Estelle natural born of the void, or even the Elden Beast. All of them point to what lies beyond the stars. They're all said to have fallen to the lands between on meteorites, whether it be by chance or a command from an outer god. Metyr was specifically sent by the Greater Will with a purpose in mind. The Staff of the Great Beyond has a description that reads, "Staff fashioned from the tail fingers of Metyr, the Mother of Fingers, and the microcosm raised aloft over the crux they form. Catalyst for casting both sorceries and incantations. The Mother received signs from the Greater Will, from the beyond of the microcosm. Despite being broken and abandoned, she kept waiting for another message to come." So what this tells us about Metyr was that the goal the Greater Will sent her down for was to receive the signals from beyond. And this should sound familiar, because the duty of the two fingers in the base game is to interpret these signals. So, the two fingers are born of Metyr. The Greater Will sends a signal from beyond the void, which Metyr receives by way of the microcosm. It is then passed on to the fingers, who communicate through their wriggles, which are then interpreted by the finger readers and passed on to their recipients. It's a complex process, but makes a lot of sense when you think in terms of antennas or modern wireless transmission. But the two fingers are not the only children of Metyr. The remembrance also claims that the finger creepers are her children as well. But we have to point out the explicit differences between the two fingers and the finger creepers. Not only in their physicality, with the finger creepers having many fingers, even being more than a hand, but on a much more deep level, the finger creepers are more like animals, with their only true power coming from the glintstone rings they wear, given to them by worshippers. The two fingers are much larger and more sophisticated, with actual power, such as the ability to choose Empyreans, create shadow-bound beasts, and the mental capacity to strategize. So we then have to raise the question, if both of these creatures come from Metyr, why are they so different? For now, hang on to that thought. But in order to actually reach Metyr, you will need to follow Count Ymir's questline, through which we'll learn a lot about the nature of Metyr. When we meet Ymir for the first time, we'll receive an item called the Hole-Laden Necklace, and be tasked with finding the Finger Ruins. These ruins are big mysteries in their own right, but according to the Nailstone description, a material that can be found here, the various fingers that we can see sprouting out of the ground physically grew in the area. It's hard to say for certain exactly what the Finger Ruins are, but what we can deduce is that there are two above ground, while the finger birthing grounds where Metyr resides are below the ground. It's possible that these finger ruins were created when meteorites impacted the lands between, and it definitely wouldn't be the first time. If we look at the geography of the area, there's quite a bit of evidence to suggest that, but in Metyr's arena, we see these pipe-like structures stretching into the sky, or at least what we presume to be the sky, but it's possible that through part of Metyr's birthing ritual, these create the finger stones that we can see in the ruins, thereby creating the ruins themselves. And by blowing into the whistle stones at these ruins, we not only have our fates guided by the stars, but receive one of the seed talismans. And their descriptions read, the Erdtree seed of this talisman was presumed to be an object of myth. This age-old artifact also depicts the two fingers, perhaps harking back to the birth of the Erdtree. Now we do know that the Erdtree was born in the Land of Shadow, given that it was part of the lands between, but this talisman more explicitly ties the two fingers back to that time as well, and therefore Metyr's arrival even earlier. When we report this back to Ymir, we have the option to ask him about the nature of the world, and he tells us about the conceits, the hypocrisy of the world built upon the Erdtree.
Is there no hope for redemption? The answer, sadly, is clear. There never was any hope. They were each of them defective, unhinged from the start. Marika herself, and the fingers that guided her. And this is what troubles me. No matter our efforts, if the roots are rotten, then we have little recourse.
The context of this statement can have many meanings, but one is clear. The root of the two fingers is Metyr, and Ymir believes that Metyr has been an improper mother to the fingers, given him calling them unhinged and defective. He sends us on this quest, ultimately to dispatch Metyr because he believes he can be the better mother properly for the fingers.
Do you recall what I said? That Marika and the fingers that guided her were unsound from the start? Well, the truth lies deeper still. It is their mother who is damaged and unhinged. The fingers are but unripe children, victims in their own right. We all need a mother, do we not? A new mother, a true mother who will not give birth to further malady.
But upon returning after beating Metyr, we're invaded by Jolan, who tells us that we wounded Count Ymir irreparably and that he wishes for our death. Now this was really confusing because we've been following his orders until now. We did exactly what he said, so how would we wound him? Well, here's what I think. Given Jolan's devotion to Ymir, I believe he told her a lie. We did exactly what he wanted us to do. Since after Metyr is gone, he inherits the new form. No one besides us knows the truth, and for him to become the true mother, the truth needs to die with us. But in this new form, Ymir is able to birth finger creepers, seemingly through his glintstone magic and bit of connection to the microcosm. The fleeting microcosm spell has a description that reads, "A finger sorcery of Count Ymir, High Priest, one of the secret hallowed rites. The broken and discarded are fully willing to cling to fleeting simulacra, earning them some modicum of sympathy." The idea illustrated here is that Ymir is no different than Metyr. He too is broken and unhinged, knowing full well that he could never become a true mother to the fingers, reinforced in the description of his staff. But why? And what would drive him to these lengths?
Forgive me. I failed you. Failed to birth you whole. I was not ready to be your mother, but I can still stay here. Nice and close. For now, my dear. Sleep soundly.
Ymir is stricken by grief, devoted to becoming a mother of the fingers, as a way to overcome his sorrow and make up for the loss of Yuri, who, according to the gravestone, was taken too soon. Much like Ymir, Metyr grieves as well, but in a different way, idly awaiting a signal from the greater will that will never come. But despite this grief, we have an interesting observation from the gazing finger weapon we can get from Metyr's remembrance, and that is the unique Ash of War that it comes with, Kowtower's Resentment, skill performed as a violent bow using a finger's foremost protrusion. Resentment builds as it is forced to bow, making it explode with anger. Hold the button down to further increase resentment. That's a very specific description right there for the Ash of War, and it shows us a few things. First of all, that Metyr has a great sense of pride, becoming angry when having to bow. But to bow at who? Perhaps it's us, the wielder of her head, but I don't think that anger would be directed at the greater will. After all, she's content to wait forever on a signal from the greater will, even to the point of abandoning her children. The same thing the greater will has done to her. But here's where things get strange, and we have to enter the territory of speculation by asking the question of why. Why did the greater will abandon Metyr? Well, this is a question that's been going on for a while. Even in the base game, we had to ask, why did the greater will abandon the two fingers? An answer is never explicitly stated, but we can theorize a bit. One possible explanation is that when Marika veiled the Land of Shadow and sealed it away, Metyr was sealed away also, and therefore the middleman between the greater will and the two fingers was cut off, and the signal lost. Yet we still see the fingers exercise authority after the sealing of the Land of Shadow, so some power still remains there, which only reinforces the doubt in my understanding of not only the timeline, but the full extent of the two fingers. But that may only be one piece of the puzzle here. The intro cinematic to the game also tells us that the shattering led to abandonment by the greater will. Is that the abandonment that happened to Metyr? Perhaps. But we do have Inya in the Round Table Hold, claiming that the greater will has not abandoned the land. Whether that's a lie from the two fingers or the truth, we ultimately don't know. But another thing we need to consider is that Ymir wasn't lying when he said that Metyr was damaged. There's a giant gash in her belly, either from a cut or a rather brutal birth. Now here's where we get into the deep speculation territory. One part of the lore that's always been a mystery to me is the high treason of the Nox. Now, given the new context of the DLC, we have more evidence that they were trying to create their own divinity, but the proof of that high treason is the Finger Slayer blade, bloodied and having been used before. One of the only things capable of harming a vassal of the Greater Will. Was it used on Metyr? And is that potentially why we're not seeing any more Two Fingers, only the lesser finger creepers? And is that why communion with the Greater Will was cut off? There's a lot to think about here. But when it comes to the mother of the fingers, there are far more mysteries than answers, and especially with the Two Fingers themselves, that rabbit hole is almost never ending. But with all the information we currently have, and the ideas that I'm sure are to come, I hope this helped you understand Metyr a little bit better. With all that though, if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to leave a like on it and subscribe if you're new around here, and as always, I will catch you in the next one.